Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Portrais, and I'm joined by Sean Koufax.
Her eyes are bigger, right?
And of course, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and did you guys see that dog get killed?
Oh, dogs getting killed is the best, everybody. Bruce really trying to bring that new audience in, just going like, I'm excited about dog death. Now, granted, It is up your alley. You have a long history of dog hate, we know.
Not everybody knows what my podcast pitch was at PodTank at DragonCon, but it was very much about a podcast for people who hate dogs.
You've never seen a group of people like descend in disagreements on a man more so than the guy that goes, I want to have a show about my dog who I try to kill, or whatever the idea was.
I don't try to kill him, I just hate him.
You just hate his guts.
I'm not the violent type.
Bad stuff. But we're here today to find out whether or not we hated the new movie out by James Cameron and Robert Rodriguez, entitled this time, Alita, Battle Angel. If you, well, I'm sure Bruce will get into some of those things a little bit later. But I do want to start out this show by just saying, hey, thank you for those of you that go over to the iTunes there and drop a 5-star review, a.k.a. Humdinger.
Humdinger.
This one comes to us from JZ, that's EE97. It's 5 stars. It's entitled Amazing and Addictive. Short and sweet. I love this one. This podcast is easily one of the best ones out there. Feels like I wrote that. Because it's short, it's succinct, and it says everything that you want to hear. You know, you're doing a good job. And we appreciate you, JZ97 there, and everyone else who went over to the iTunes. Drop a 5-star review, a.k.a. Humdinger.
Humdinger.
And just tell your friends, man. I'm sure you got friends out there. Don't you? Tell them about the show. Let them download it and, see if they can join the crew, man. Get them to be an HMPer like yourself. And if you want to be a real HMPer, you can head on over to patreon.com/HMP. Get our pre-show, post-show. We talked about everything from Batfleck to Wolverine, and what was the last thing that you brought up? Oh yeah, Bruce may be a sleep apnea superhero. So if you want to hear what that consists of, head on over to patreon.com/HMP today, and we'd like to thank everybody that does that. All right, guys, it has been a second since we've been in the theater, but we're back yet again. Let's go ahead and listen to the trailer for Alita: Battle Angel.
Well, look at you.
May your dreams bring you peace in the darkness. May you always
This is just a body. It's not bad or good. That part's up to you.
I don't mean to be rude, but am I supposed to know you?
Actually, we just met.
It's a harsh world. The strong prey on the weak down here.
The sun shines upon you again. Hear this prayer in my heart.
Does it bother you that I'm not completely human?
And will never
I'd do whatever I had to for you. I'd give you whatever I have. I'd give you my heart.
Alita, they will come for you.
Why?
I think you are someone very special.
may you stay in the arms of the angel.
Alrighty, that was the trailer for Alita Battle Angel, our new release review of this week. Here's the IMDb plotline. As we know, IMDb always 100% correct in everything they say and or do. A deactivated female cyborg is revived but cannot remember anything of her past life and goes on a quest to find out who she is. This is directed by Robert Rodriguez, written by James Cameron, Robert Rodriguez, and Lasta Carla. I cannot pronounce the last name. I'm so sorry.
Good luck. No one can.
Superman.
That's a tough one. Starring Rose Salazar, Christoph Waltz, Jennifer Connelly, Mahershala Ali. See, I got that one right.
Mahershala.
It's the same thing. It's both or other. You know what? You stop trying to rain on my parade, Bruce. Ed Scarrett and, of course, Jackie Earle Haley. I'm ready to get to the point of the show where Bruce butchers a whole bunch of Japanese names. So if you thought mine was bad, let's do this. All right, Mr. Correct People on Names. Let's see how you do there, fella.
Gundam, I think I'm saying that right. Gundam is a manga written and drawn by Yukito Kishiro, but close friends call him Yuki Kish, which is what I'm going to call him for the rest of this segment now, big boy. The manga's cyberpunk art style has been called a cross between Mobius and Simon Bisley. Gundam literally translated means gun dream, but it was first published in English as Battle Angel Alita by Viz Media in comic book format, with 68 Viz Select Comics issues split into 8 parts from July 1992 to March 1998. The manga is a story of the people and cyborgs of the scrapyard living beneath the floating city of Typhares, whose inhabitants dump their junk in the scrapyard and rule above its inhabitants. One day, Ito, full name is Daisuke Ito in the manga, is a former Typherian citizen and doctor specializing in cyborg repairs. He finds the intact head of a young cyborg girl in a vast pile of scrap. He takes her in, gives her a body and the name Alita. Alita then discovers long-forgotten fighting techniques hidden in her body and decides to become a hunter-warrior, a bounty collector employed by the factories of Typhares. Though the story told in the manga is largely the same as what we get on the big screen, there are some differences of interest. The story's pacing is faster than the comics, and the movie combines multiple elements spanning across the comic book series, meshing some of the timelines and events. Of note, in the Japanese story, Alita's name isn't Alita, it is Gali, and the name is given to her by Ito in honor of his beloved cat, not his daughter. The name Gali was chosen as an abbreviation of Galatea, the statue given life by the Greek sculptor Pygmalion. Personally, I prefer the name Liza Doolittle because she was a fair lady, Adam.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the best I can tell, and I very well may be wrong as I do not know how to read Japanese, it is the English translation that not only changes the young cyborg's name to Alita, but attributes it to Ito's daughter rather than his feline friend. Zapan has a tragic backstory in the comics, revealing his transformation to a cyborg being a less than pleasant one, and that he was responsible for the unintentional murder of the only woman he ever loved. The city in which Alita lives, called the Scrapyard in the English version, Iron City in the movie, and Scrap Iron City in the manga, is revealed late in the series to be the remnants of Kansas City, setting the story in a post-apocalyptic Midwestern United States. In the manga, civilization was destroyed due to a meteorite crashing into Tokyo and tilting the Earth on its axis rather than a war with Mars. Oh, and all this happened in the year 2012. Coincidentally, that's the year that both the Mayan calendar and John Cusack's career ended. Now, Destiny Nova is the villain in the first run of the manga, and he's known to say sinister things like, "I spit on the second law of thermodynamics." His modus operandi is to use nanotechnology to cause all kinds of evil, and the Flying City decides it is easier to let him live there than to fight against him. Also, Nova is devoted to a bizarre religion/philosophy called Karmatron Dynamics, and that's a religion I need to found here in the real world. Now, Destiny Nova is named after a lyric in a Blue Oyster Cult song. No, it's not Godzilla, but rather astronomy. And several other Blue Oyster Cult references occur in the manga, so I'm guessing Yuki Kish is a fan. The last thing I'll say about Nova is that he has a son named Chaos, who is a popular late-night radio host. Jashugan, who only gets a small cameo in the movie, is the major adversary of the Motorball arc in the comics, and he proves to be quite an impressive adversary indeed. Also, if you're curious, Murdoch is the name of the guy with the cyborg dogs in the comic. They call him McTeague in the movie. Hugo is known as Yugo in Japan, but American publishers decided it was best not to name him after the only car worse than a Pinto, so they changed it to Hugo. And Hugo follows pretty much the same arc in the comics as in the movie, but he doesn't seem to be as into Alita as she is into him. The manga reveals that Vector came from a poor village on the outskirts of the city, and due to the ability to instantly judge whether anyone was lying to him, he became the most powerful person in the scrapyard. Though he does supply body parts to Typhares in the manga, I do not believe he's associated with Motorball. The best I can tell, Jennifer Connelly's character Chiron doesn't appear in the comics, though Desti Nova serves a lot of the same functions as she does in the story. He's an exile from the Flying City who uses treachery to find his way back and functions at times as a frenemy of Alita throughout the series. Chiron does appear in the anime and, of course, in the movie. Panzerkunst is German for armored art, or at least that's what I'm told. And it is the first martial art to anticipate combat in zero gravity originating on Mars. Panzerkunst seeks oneness between the senses and is commonly referred to as the strongest of the cyborg martial arts. Especially effective at disabling and destroying larger opponents, it is the basis of other space martial arts, such as space karate. Wow, I've been doing space karate since I was 6. I have a plasma belt and everything in space karate. Now, Alita's birth name was Yoko, and she was born during the terraforming wars as a masked tumor extracted from a Martian rebel and attached to a cybernetic body as part of a plot to overthrow the Martian princess Kagura Dornberg. Yoko was abducted by the Martian armed forces who tried to force her to cross a minefield as a means of execution. As Yoko was unable to walk because her body had been damaged, another young girl named Erica came to her rescue and supported her across. They were able to walk for 100 paces, but just as they were about to step on a mine, Yoko was rescued by a group of Panzerkunst warriors who slaughtered the soldiers. She was left at an orphanage until she was able to begin her own Panzerkunst training. Yoko was picked to carry out Operation Malwerf and was sent to upload a virus that effectively killed 450,000 civilians. She was captured shortly afterwards and sentenced to execution by atmospheric drop as punishment. Alita crash-landed in Scrap Iron City, where she lay in stasis for over 200 years. Alita's trademark anti-glare patches on her cheek have a different origin in the manga. They are not pooch blood, but rather come when she instinctively reaches down to a pool of oil and paints them onto her cheeks. On Typhares, the flying city of Zalum, in the movie, the secret to the people's long lives is that they have their brains transferred to a microchip, but one unfortunate side effect is that they eventually go insane. Thus, Ito demands to have his removed. We kind of see that with the little blue crystals in their forehead in the movie. At least once per story arc, Alita's body gets destroyed, but fortunately for her, it always gets rebuilt better than it was before. At the finale of the first run of the comic, Alita is blown into millions of little pieces and the story ends. This was supposed to be the last issue of the comic ever. It ends with Nova casually sweeping up the debris. A lot of folks thought this was a seriously downer ending, but Yuki Kish had to rush it as his own health was failing and he feared he may die. Fortunately, Yuki Kish recovered, but unfortunately, he undid the poignancy of the original ending by using the old last-second consciousness transfer, LMD, Palpatine clone type of drivel that kept the series going for a very, very, very long time. And readers feel that not a lot mattered in the ongoing story since any death could be undone. But it did provide an opportunity to delve deeply into lots of backstory and philosophy. James Cameron was introduced to Gundam by fellow director Guillermo del Toro and subsequently purchased the rights to a film adaptation in 2000. I guess he got sidetracked by the long development of Avatar, followed by lots of gloating over those who told him 3D was a gimmick that wasn't worth investing in. I suppose after that, he was far too busy re-releasing Titanic and making terrible, terrible Terminator sequels to direct the movie himself, but he found comic book movie pioneer Robert Rodriguez to do his dirty work and bring another great comic action girl to the big screen.
Now, I think, yeah, so like around 2000, then like 2000, like it was only 2003-ish when like even it had announced that he had the rights and was doing anything with it. at that time, Jessica Alba, who James Cameron had kind of just discovered more or less and put on Dark Angel on television, she was actually slated to be Alita.
I can see that. She kind of has the look, or at least, she definitely did in 2003.
Yeah. So, but obviously, 2003 was a long time ago at this point, and
yeah.
But yeah, I'm a big Robert Rodriguez fan, so I was kind of excited to see him doing this because I think James Cameron, in a lot of ways, can be a bit like George Lucas, to where I think he's a really good idea man, but as of late, his execution on those ideas aren't always to the biggest of my likings. Avatar, obviously, and he's going to be doing several more of those instead of more original and entertaining content.
Here's what I'd say about James Cameron as a director, from my point of view. Didn't he do the TV Beauty and the Beast?
No, he married Linda Hamilton, who was in the Beauty and the Beast.
So wasn't he the showrunner for that?
No, he just married her.
For that in some weird alternative reality. Yeah. Terminator 2. Those are both movies that I remember fondly.
Sean, I mean, have you heard much
what
about
I really
this?
think of?
Go ahead, because you're roboting out, Bruce. Take a break.
So I knew that Cameron had this property, but I didn't know how much he was doing with the property. I didn't know that he had been writing this thing forever, and it shows. It shows that there was a lot of work put into the script. I having known literally nothing before walking into the movie theater today, when you watch this movie on screen, although not my jam, I do understand that a lot of time and love went into the script for this thing.
The weird opinion I have with my own personal biases about James Cameron is I feel like if he had directed this, it would be a lesser movie but make a lot more money, and I don't understand how he does that.
It's weird, and I think those days may be gone for him. I mean, because like Avatar made all the money that it did, but it remains to be seen what he's going to be doing with at least one sequel, probably two at least. I just don't know that, especially given that amount of time and everything, that we're all willing to, just go, oh, it's all good again. It might not
I
be
totally disagree with you. And here's why, is that James Cameron has been told that he is down and out and he's never coming back multiple times before. And, I'm old enough to know that when he was making Titanic, everyone was kind of laughing at him.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was the behind the scenes stories that were coming out in the tabloids were that it was an utter disaster.
The ungodly amounts of money, and yeah.
And so after that, then he makes another movie called Avatar, which, again, people are laughing behind his back at everything that he keeps talking about. It's going to happen again. James Cameron is going to bring out something again. Maybe it's not the sequel to Avatar. Maybe it's something else. But he does have something else. I fully believe that he's going to come back with something else again where everyone's like, wow, this is amazing. And here's why I think that. I think that unlike Lucas, Cameron is a really just terrific director. And he knows when to make beats fast and when to make them slow. And even a movie that, like, let's take Titanic for a second here. Titanic is a movie that is not made for me, and it isn't made for it's made for a very select few people. But because it's shot so well, because it's paced so well, it works. That is a movie that works, and it's because of his directing, as well as probably his writing, because he is a good writer too. But his directing specifically. He shoots action very, very well. And unlike a Michael Bay movie, when you're watching Michael Bay, and sometimes when you're watching, like Adam Portrais' favorite, all the Transformers movies, and it's just, to me, it looks like tinfoil fighting each other after a while. And I can't tell what is what and who's fighting who. Cameron shoots stuff where you know exactly what's happening all the time. And that's a really good thing to have, and he has it.
And I'll say Rodriguez did a good job of that too with this movie, because this definitely had scenes that it could have been real easy to just get lost in metal tentacles and not know up from down. And I never felt that way.
There was a couple of moments where I wasn't exactly sure what was happening, but for the most part, yes, I would say like an 85% hit ratio on that.
I think a lot of that is he's willing to do stuff in wide shots too. Like he's like Robert Rodriguez in this movie specifically. He's really just going like, I'm just going to let this stay nice and wide and you can watch these fights. Because look, let's be honest, most of it's CG, but you can still tell a good story that way.
Do you think this could have been like the big triumphant return for Cameron if he had directed this? I'm still not entirely sure why he didn't want to direct this.
Well, I think I have an idea why he didn't. It's because if he would have directed it, it would have cost twice as much money. The thing about having Rodriguez as your director is he's able to keep costs pretty low. And I don't know what the budget is on this, but I guarantee it would be double if Cameron was.
I'll say this. The estimated budgets that are out there, I think, are all wrong just on account of that, Sean, is because Robert Rodriguez is one of those dudes where, like, his most expensive movie was like $65 million, but, like, he makes, even movies that cost, like, $20-30 million look like $100 million films.
Right.
They're saying the estimated budget for this is $200 million. I say under his watch, there's no way that's possible unless somehow James Cameron, who's also a producer, if I'm not mistaken, probably got his hand in and just like, can we crank up that cash machine more? Which I think is a bad idea. But I mean, if you look at it, to me, and I know a lot about like Rodriguez's style and how he kind of, quote unquote, has shortcuts in order to, make the most of his dollar, right? This movie doesn't cost no $200 million. I can tell you that right now. Not the way that he does stuff.
Weta did the effects. Aren't they expensive?
I mean, they probably can. They can cost a pretty penny, but I don't know that they're as. It just seems like a bit exorbitant to me.
And I also feel like they got not a low end cast in terms of what the cost is going to be for your actors either.
But again, let's just take Jennifer Connelly. I promise you, Jennifer Connelly was not on set for more than 2 days. Christoph Waltz probably was not there for more than a week. That's how Rodriguez shoots.
Christoph Waltz and Mahershala Ali are both Oscar winners.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, they're going to be less cheap than other people who could have played those roles. It's interesting, and I also wonder if maybe some people they had a little more ability to cast who they wanted, because there are a lot of folks that may have wanted to work with Robert Rodriguez. I've got another question, man. When people say Robert Rodriguez's name, I think, yeah, that's a good director. That's a guy that I like. But then I think back on his movies, and I like Sin City. I like Sin City too, just fine. I know not everybody did. And I like both the Spanish language and the English language Desperado well enough. And then the kids' movies and some of the other stuff, like, I just kind of wasn't all that interested. I mean, they weren't bad by any means, but I don't know. What is it that you guys would say that makes Robert Rodriguez great?
All right, I'll take it. Basically, it all comes back to, really kind of how he started. It's a guy who goes, I'm going to stay out of the Hollywood system, and I'm going to do stuff that's just as big and impressive as Hollywood stuff, but without Hollywood, quote unquote Hollywood money. I don't have to go to Hollywood to shoot this. I'm going to live in Austin, Texas, like all of his studios and stuff, save for some of the big studio space. Most of his stuff is at his house. His editing facility's all there. His sound is all there. He's a step away from all of it. It's integral to who he is as a person.
Does he live in Texas?
He lives in Austin, Texas. Yeah, and he does.
Because I noticed this was filmed in Texas in large part.
Yeah, that's because that's where he shoots, and he doesn't he puts it out like this. If I go to Hollywood, if I'm go over there for meetings and stuff, people are willing to take meetings rather quickly because I don't live here. I'm not going to be out here for long, so you're going to take those meetings and and go with it. But staying out of the system, it's like how a lot of exploitation people in the back in the day went and shot movies in the Philippines. You could shoot movies in the Philippines for nothing, and you had no oversight from anybody, and you could just do whatever you wanted. And now, he's kind of like that.
Is it fair for me to say that when I saw this combo of Cameron and Rodriguez. I thought it was like an odd couple kind of situation. I think of them as very different people.
I don't, and the reason why I think that they work well together is because of Rodriguez. You know, Rodriguez can work with anybody, it feels like.
Yeah.
You know, whether you're talking about Tarantino or Sylvester Stallone, where everybody seems to enjoy the work because he is so collaborative, and it feels like he probably even lets other people take the lead, because I can't imagine someone like Tarantino is going to let somebody kind of take the lead, take the keys to the car.
Oh no.
And Cameron has that same thing where, you know, Cameron, because as I learned by doing so very many Stallone connections over the years, is that Stallone and Cameron can't stand Stallone because he messed with his script for Rambo First Blood Part 2.
Yeah.
And he has nothing but great things to say about Rodriguez. Now, Cameron coming up through the ranks as one of those guys, like he shot Piranha 2, so he knows what it's like to shoot these really small budget things, probably looks at Rodriguez and goes, oh, he just figured out a way to do it so he can do all of this himself. And he probably admires that. Whether or not, you know, if they're both in the same room, how ideas are getting to page, I don't know. But I would imagine that Cameron probably is taking the lead on that.
And, you know, I just think James Cameron is, and you know, I kind of forget that he did do things like Piranha 2. And you know, the Terminator, the original Terminator was pretty much an indie film that got a distribution deal.
Right.
So I kind of forget that, but I think of him as a major studio insider type. And I think of Rodriguez as an indie guy. And I think that's what I mean by the odd couple. I don't mean the personalities clashing or anything like that. But, you know, I think one guy has quietly managed to get his name into the conversation along with Spielberg and Lucas whenever you're talking box office returns. He finally put to death the old joke of Lucas and Spielberg taking turns congratulating each other on setting box office records when he set 2 in a row that look like they're untouchable. You know, if the Avengers can't touch it, nothing can. And then Rodriguez, who, you know, I still think one of his best movies was like a $6,000 budget that I only got to see at a college film festival, you know, the first Desperado movie. So I kind of forget that everybody comes from somewhere, and Cameron's story was just a little before I was hip enough to be onto the story.
That's fair. Now, I'd never heard of this. I mean, I'd heard of the book and everything, never read anything, didn't really know exactly what I was getting into. But I actually had a good amount of fun with this movie. I mean, I think it starts off probably a little bit choppy, but once it kind of gets rolling there and everything, I think it's a lot of fun. And I'll say this. It's making decent money at the box office. Certainly not good. One of the lowest President's Day weekends ever. So that's good. But to me, I really think they did a disservice by like really not just pumping out the jams for the girl power in this thing, right? You know, rightfully so. There's a lot of people that are just like, oh, can't wait till this Captain Marvel. Dude, you got a Captain Marvel before Captain Marvel right now, you know?
And I'll say that I always bring in a lot of negative baggage. Whenever I hear Western live action adaptation of manga or anime, I have very, very low expectations.
Because
the
they're
track record's
not good. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, track record's not great. Sort of totally different styles of storytelling. It was just going to be another Ghost in the Shell. And it turned out, no, this was the Ghost in the Shell the Ghost in the Shell should have been. Like I started to see more previews and actually find myself getting excited for this. Whereas the first time I saw it, I thought, man, this is another one of those Power Rangers type movies I'm going to have to sit through. And the more I saw about it and the more I heard about it and the more enthusiasm I sense from the creators, because, you know, I'm the kind of guy, a lot of enthusiasm from a creator that you can tell is genuine and not just marketing goes a long way with me. I got very excited for this by the time I saw it, and it didn't let me down because I had also went from the negative baggage problem to the problem where your expectations are a little too high, and it actually just hit the mark perfectly. And I think we've established before that I have a soft spot for these kind of comic book characters like Hit Girl, one of my all-time favorite. X-23, in particular, X-23 from the movie Logan, who's a little bit younger than X-23 from the comics. I loved that character a lot. I like Damian Wayne in the comics a lot. And now I can add Alita to that list of like these young. I'm trying to think. They look like they shouldn't be nearly as tough as they are type characters.
I think that because for me, I didn't know anything about this at all. I'd heard the name for sure. I knew it was based on manga. I knew that, but that's all I knew. After I was of the age where you get Akira, like when Akira first comes to America, and I was all about it. It was so great. And then there came that wave of things after Akira where it all feels like it's the exact same thing, just slight modifications to the Akira thing.
Yeah.
And I know that Alita Battle Angel came during that time. And so I had seen one or two things after Akira, and then I was like, I'm done with all of this stuff. I'm out. And it wasn't until my oldest daughter got into manga that I was watching things and going, oh, this is not at all like Akira anymore.
Yeah.
And I know that seems like the oldest thing in the world that a human being can say, but that really was what was happening for a very long time. For 10 years, basically, we were getting things in America that weren't Akira. And so this was one of those things that came in during that time. So I have a complete blind spot towards all this stuff. And I think that seeing this movie today, there's something about this movie that I think that I did not understand until I got into the movie theater. The people who are seeing this movie with me today are every type of human being that can possibly exist. I was sitting next to a family of 5 of very nice Mexican people who were completely and utterly into this movie because they have 2 little girls, and the girls were totally into this thing. There's African Americans there. There's white people there. There's young people. There's old people. There's all kinds of people. And it was fairly packed for a Sunday. And I think that because of that, this movie is going to have a little more staying power than we see right now because it's just doing okay. But I think that it's going to continue on this path for a bit until something comes in that, you have to see. But that isn't for a while still. We still have almost, a month before something big comes in here?
And, you're talking about all types of people going to this movie. When I went to see it, the movie theater that I go to, as I imagine most movie theaters now, it's kind of a split level where you have an entry level and you can go down some steps to like the lower part or up some steps to the upper part. And I always like to sit in that front row in the upper part that's right on the aisle. I don't go up or down any steps. And I was sitting there with my daughter. It was our Valentine's Day date. We actually saw this on Valentine's Day with me and my daughter. And this old guy on a walker comes in. So we get up and give him our seat so he doesn't have to deal with the steps. But I mean, talking about, would you have thought that even people, and I don't mean he was a young person on a walker either. I mean, this was grandpa age person who was curious about this movie. I thought that was really cool. Him and his wife for their Valentine's Day date went to see Alita Battle Angel.
That is adorable.
And
I love that.
And I like how grandpa ages an age bracket.
Everybody knows what you mean when you say that.
Yeah, of course.
But I don't know. It's hard for me to put my finger on what makes the Western adaptations of anime and manga so disappointing. But one thing I'll say is I don't think Western directors get it a lot of times. I don't think they get it, or the ones that do get it don't get a budget. I mean, you've either got something like Guyver or you've got something like Ghost in the Shell. But then also, I think something here is this is a property that was a manga that became anime, but the anime wasn't very successful. Like the manga is really where the success is around this property. So there's not a whole lot of preconceived notions from the anime to try to compete with, I think, a lot of times that you're running into. When you're looking at the lists of greatest anime, you're not going to run across Gundam. And there was never a Gundam movie the way that Akira or Ghost in the Shell or a bunch of other high profile things that, we could mention there. It's not like that. And I think that was kind of cool here, too. It was almost a little bit under the radar when it came to James Cameron. And then PlayStation made a game out of it. That's probably the highest profile property is Gundam Mars Chronicles or something like that is what it's called, the video game.
Okay.
But yeah. So anyway, I don't know exactly what they did right. You know, why is this something that's so much more satisfying than Ghost in the Shell? Because Ghost in the Shell has source material that is probably general consensus is going to be the source material Ghost in the Shell is higher quality than the source material of Gunham. But the movie turned out, you know, a whole lot better than the Scarlett Johansson thing.
I agree, but I think that a lot of that has to also do with who you're casting in this thing. And keep in mind, I'm not a massive fan of this movie. I like the way it starts. I think it starts terrific. I didn't find it choppy at all. What I really liked about it is the two leads. You know, Christoph Waltz and the lady who done be playing Alita. They're terrific together. They really are.
Rosa Salazar, who plays
Rosa
Alita
Salazar.
Here. And I took my daughter to see this, and while we're watching the movie, particularly when she has her first cyborg body, you know, the one that was made for his daughter before she gets the titanium nanotechnology body, I kind of leaned over to my daughter and said, "You may not believe this, but that actor is 31 years old playing Alita." So she couldn't believe that. But this is an actress who did a good job of playing down in age. And, of course, it's a CGI performance, basically, so that makes it a little bit easier. But I was pretty impressed because having seen her, not in a lot of other stuff, but like I saw her in Bird Box. She had a small part in Bird Box. I didn't see how she was going to be able to convince me that she's a 14-year-old or equivalent of a 14-year-old, 15-year-old girl. But she does it pretty good. You know, the comics say she goes from 14 to 18 when she gets the body upgrade. And I bought that. I felt like she was playing 14. Then I felt like she was playing 18. I never thought she was playing 31.
Right. I agree.
Christoph Waltz, man, he may have a career in this acting thing.
You know, you might be good at it. What with your two best supporting actor Oscars? Oh,
you know, if he might even get in a James Bond movie someday if he hopes for it.
Fingers crossed.
He's so weirdly gentle in this movie, you know, for who this character is.
And he does this cool thing that Harrison Ford could do in later years but can't quite do anymore, where he looks like an old man and a buff guy at the same time. Like he does the intellectual old man, but then you still buy him as a bounty hunter because you look at his forearms, man. The guy goes to the gym. Yes. Or maybe he's a cobbler. I don't know, but he's got the muscles on his arm. And I'm telling you, when with the little glasses he's wearing, and then he puts on the hat and the trench coat, I'm thinking if they ever do make that Indiana Jones reboot, he needs to be the Nazi guy that gets the thing burned into the palm of his hand. He'd be great for that role. He's German and everything.
This just felt like a character that was so up your alley in as much as like he dresses up in some weird garb and then gets a giant hammer, a rocket-propelled hammer,
from the manga,
and comes out
the
there.
Rocket hammer.
Come on.
They call it a rocket hammer or rocket axe or something. I mean, that's straight from the manga, and that looks like a manga weapon, the kind of thing that's hard to translate to screen. You know, they had to subdue it a little bit, but it's not a very subdued weapon. I did like that, and I also like some of the villains she's facing here. I think that I want to give a lot of credit to well, of course, Mahershala Ali is great and everything. I don't think he's asked to do a lot in this movie, and he still does a great job. Makes me, the whole time I'm watching, and he's got kind of a little bit of the futuristic garb, the haircut that he's sporting, the dark glasses. I'm like, if they can afford him, this needs to be the guy in our Blade reboot.
Right?
Should do.
So good. It just screamed to me, make him Blade, everybody. Come on. It is staring you right in the face.
He's also playing two characters in this movie.
That's true.
And does a great job, man.
Yeah, and I fully 100% believe that there's somebody else in his body.
He's playing two characters while Ed Norton gets to play none. He's doing all the heavy lifting. But also, man, I'm trying to think of the right way to put this. I really like Ed Skrein because I really can't stand him when he plays a character, and that's the reaction I'm supposed to have.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
You know, we used to talk, and this is another actor who shows up very, very briefly in this movie. I used to talk about a guy with a face that was born for punching. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Jay Courtney.
And he's in this movie very briefly as Josh Ugan. But I think Ed Skrein takes that title away from Jai Courtney, like easily. Like, I definitely want to punch Ed Skrein. And, but I mean, I'm supposed to want to punch him. You know what I mean? But he plays this character, Francis, in Deadpool. He was great. He's great here. I never saw that Transporter reboot. You saw that, didn't you, Adam?
Yeah, it sucked. But it's not. It wasn't necessarily his fault. It was like that just couldn't have been good. Period.
But he can't play the good guy. You know, he's got to play the guy you want to punch. That's
Absolutely.
why he's good as Zapan. He's good as Francis, Ajax, whatever you want to call him. Did you know that Ed Skrein is an aspiring rapper or has like a rap career or something?
Listen,
why do you think you want to punch him in the face, Bruce? That's why.
You knew that
I
instinctually.
went to YouTube. I've said this once already, but I don't think that it really makes me mad when somebody is good at more than one thing. So I went to watch YouTube, some of his rap videos. I'm not mad at Ed Skrein. He is not good at more than one thing. I'll leave it at that. Now, here's something that I didn't realize going into this movie, and I should have. And I didn't even realize it during the movie. I realized it in the credits. But when Gruishka is really down in the underground talking about Little Flea and how he grew up here where everybody else throws their trash out and he's going to pinch her head, he's going to wear her head like a pendant so that she can constantly remember his mercy. I'm thinking, man, this actor is really putting on the Rorschach voice. He must love Rorschach. And then in the credits, when I see that was Jackie Earle Haley, didn't look anything like
you were like 1,000% not who you would have figured was behind all that crap.
But I mean, I'm picking up like, wow, this guy really he's ripping off Jackie Earle Haley big time. This is the Rorschach voice. But then when I saw that it was Jackie Earle Haley, I was so disappointed in myself because you guys know I can't get enough Jackie Earle Haley in a comic book movie. I love him in Preacher. I love him as the Terror and the Tick. And I love Gruishka now.
And you love the kid in Bad News Bears. We all know that.
Who doesn't? Kelly Leak is awesome.
Was that his face kind of stretched out to look beefy on that Gruishka?
I guess so. I guess that's what that is. I'm like you, Bruce. I had no idea it was him. All I knew was that the guy was putting on one heck of a performance. And I was like, wow, whoever they got to play that guy is great. I wonder who Jackie Earle Haley is going to be playing in this movie. Like I very specifically remember thinking that.
But I mean, you had to. I mean, that was the Rorschach voice he was using, given his monologue. I mean, that was even almost Rorschach-like stuff, talking about the filth of the city and all this. I'll wear your head around my neck.
I didn't hear that either, but I think.
I'm sitting there watching it with my daughter, thinking in my head, my goodness, he's putting on a Rorschach voice. I wonder what the deal is. And then later when I saw that Jackie Earle Haley was in the cast, I thought, well, man, he must have told this guy how to do the Rorschach voice.
Wouldn't that have been hilarious if he did, like Bruce just grabbed his daughter's hand and just go, this is not my Rorschach, and then just left, just took her. She's like, Daddy, I want to watch the movie. This is not my Rorschach, doggone it, and just takes her away. So
the hot topic of conversation on the internet before the movie came out more than afterwards has been the eyes. I mean, obviously, they catch your attention. They did decrease the size of the eyes from the first trailer to the later trailers. What did you guys think about the eyes?
I thought it was perfect. It really was perfect, and I do know what you're talking about because we have spoken about this in the past about this exact thing, and I did not find it distracting at all. I think that they figured it out. And when you're watching this character, you immediately, because the eyes are so big, you immediately are like, oh, hey, let's make sure that she's taken care of because she's got gigantic puppy eyes.
And if you had no idea whatsoever that this was based on a manga or an anime, you would know as soon as you saw those eyes.
Sure.
And they did a good job of pushing her into the uncanny valley and giving her that sense of otherness.
Yeah.
Without making her, I don't know what the right word is, without making her,
creepy.
Not only creepy, but just ridiculous. Yes. Like, it's not ridiculous.
And I think because it is supposed to be so otherworldly, that's why it works.
Yeah.
And so you have this character who, because they even do the smart thing where when you're looking at close-ups of Alita's face, her skin isn't perfect. There's pores and there's like a couple of blemishes here and there. And it was interesting to me that, oh wow, they really nailed it for this. And the reason why is because, you know, the eyes are bigger. This is not a human being.
And they gave her such a frail body, that first body that she had, that really, you know, does look like an adolescent's body, and super skinny arms and everything. And that is part of what makes it so awesome to me when she actually starts kicking Ed Skrine's butt and takes out a whole room full of hunter warriors, bounty hunters, because she looks so easy to underestimate. And I won't say almost. I would just say I don't like it as much when she gets the upgraded body, because it's not as unbelievable as it was before. And I especially love
here is my first big ding in this movie, is that so they leave the city. And he wants to show her something, so he goes and heads out like where there's grass and all this stuff, and there's a ship in the water, and they find the new body in there. Why aren't people living out there? It seems a whole lot better than living on a giant junk pile. I'm gonna ding this specifically about the ship, because she goes, "Hey, there's the ship. We need to go to the forward cabin. That we can't. It's in the water. It's literally 15 feet away in very still, clear water that looks quite pleasant to swim in. How would we possibly get 15 feet? I guess swimming was outlawed in the future.
Well, you guys certainly didn't read the manga, because underwater breathing apparatuses went away 300 years ago.
You don't need you need a dog paddle. That's all you need to get out there. If you can doggy paddle, I can float and backstroke out to that boat.
But you couldn't sink to the bottom like she did. This is sound science, Bruce.
But isn't that? I mean, doesn't it seem ridiculous to you that hey, things are really beautiful out here, but no one lives out here? Let's go back to our giant junk pile where we're always afraid for our lives. Why is that happening? Why haven't people moved out there?
For this, have you ever visited the Midwest, Sean? And have you ever visited Detroit? Like, that is very much like America. There are places that I wonder, why does anybody want to live here? And then I can go, honestly, I'd say less than 45 minutes in almost any direction and find nothing but wide open spaces with grass and trees and beautiful rivers and ponds where nobody lives, and people feel sorry for if you tell them that's where you live. There's some human nature of learned helplessness about that kind of thing.
I guess I don't get people.
Yeah, me either. People stink. But then again, there's no Wi-Fi out there.
Also true. And
why
also,
would
you're not going to find a dead robot girl out in the wilderness where it's nice.
Exactly. Hey, if your job is doing cyber surgery on the scum and villainy of the world, you have to live where the scum and villainy of the world live. I understand why Ito lives there.
Here's one of my things. If I was one of these people that's going in there and, you know, a robot chopped off my arm or some such nonsense, and I had to get a robot arm myself, and I saw this girl sitting there, I'd be like, excuse me, what is this garbage you're putting on me?
Yes, exactly.
I'm looking at this girl. I'm just like, look at this beautiful girl with this like perfect, like, you know, robot body and everything, and you're giving me some over here that looks like a reject from, you know, a transformer that didn't work.
Left over from the claw game at Chuck E. Cheese.
No kidding.
It's your arm.
It's just like we got some of those you know, connects to put together and make an arm for you. Like, that's just silly.
Why does it look like you retrofitted a dumpster to make my arm?
You remember the arm from the original NES that was supposed to be able to play some sort of game with you?
Yeah.
Sure.
A guy had
the Power
that
Glove.
Yeah, a guy had that for an arm. I'm telling you, I saw it.
I'm a robot. Sure you are, buddy.
But the movie, man, it had so much fun. I enjoy some of the fight scenes so much. I enjoy some of the action scenes so much. I enjoy the charisma that I get from this character and how she's simultaneously naive and deadly. You know, I'm a sucker for that kind of conceit in a character.
Yeah,
I'm going to forgive some of the stuff that I don't like, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't mention some of the stuff I don't like. For one thing, particularly towards the end, I feel like Hugo's character is just all over the place. He doesn't stick to a line. He doesn't have an arc. He has erratic movements. That's not the same as an arc. Just because you change doesn't mean you had an arc. And then it gets sort of needlessly complicated, in my opinion, with everything. Like, he almost kills and she keeps him alive to give him a cyborg body to immediately die. So I felt like some of that was a little messier than it needed to be. It could have been streamlined. Why the heck does Jennifer Connelly know which abandoned church to be inside of at just the right time for the head transplant? And why not just put him in a Futurama jar? That would have been funny. But his character, the actor's good. There's potential in the character. I felt like they didn't necessarily stay the course with where they wanted him to be. And as far as the source material, manga and anime is notorious for these out of the blue kind of changes in direction with characters. So I understand that. But for the movie, they kind of ironed out some of the kinks with a few of the other characters. I felt like Hugo was still a little bit all over the place. And man, sci-fi, this goes back to the source material. But man, ever since the late 70s, sci-fi has really been trying to make roller derby the sport of the future, and I just don't see it happen.
The future.
But at least motorball makes sense. Like the rules of motorball, you can follow it, and you can know these rules make sense. Versus something like the movie Rollerball, where what now? What are the rules to this game?
They also had some game on Battlestar Galactica, and I'm not talking about the reboot on Sci-Fi. I'm talking about the old school 70s network television, Battlestar Galactica. They had a game that they played that was like rollerball mixed with galactic bowling. like they had roller skates and they had neon and black lights and like a basketball hoop was involved or something. And it was very much like motorball here, only, none of the cyborgs were involved.
Which is all stupid because we know the future of gaming is highlight. We all know that.
Agreed. Give me a Cessna.
What I see when I watch motorball, and the comics do make it more of a team sport and different kind of scenarios. But when I'm watching motorball, I'm seeing you don't need the ball. You either just make this an anything goes cyborg race, or you make this BattleBots 2600.
Well, but it's about getting the ball into the thing. I mean, I get that part. You have them on either side of the rink.
You're like bowler, but you're like, roller derby, basketball. There you go.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
But it ultimately just ends up being a race. You want to be the fastest, and people do dirty tricks to try to crash you.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, it's put a ball in NASCAR and you get motorball.
Dude, yeah, I'd watch that.
But that's what makes it work.
There's a game called Rocket League, Bruce. That's exactly that.
Yeah. How long until Rocket League is like a real thing and not a computer game?
I would absolutely watch Rocket League if it was a real thing.
I'm sure that there's at least some community that's done it with like one of those super large inflatable balls.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. I just had to point out that many, many times they try to convince us that the most popular sport of the future is some futuristic variation on roller derby. But
it really is the sport. There's like they literally talk about nothing else, and that is the only thing that anyone cares about. But I'll say this was actually surprisingly good. That they had like the low key one that the kids do, in the neighborhood and everything, and it's very much like a nice version. It's very much like that. What a stickball version of that would be like. It's kind of like what they've got, but not really. It's a lot smaller and stuff, but it actually worked really well.
I agree. The guy that wrote the stories from Japan, where all they have is baseball and sumo wrestling, so he didn't have a lot to work with.
I combine these two, and then put them on roller skates. There you go. I love roller skates. What can I say?
I would sign up to watch some sumo ball leagues, like they combine baseball and sumo wrestling at first base or something.
Bruce Leslie, your love of fat gentlemen is well publicized.
According to the credits, Casper Van Diem was in this movie somewhere.
Yeah, which I was looking for him because he's got that weird thing where he is unworldly handsome to where he's kind of weird looking.
Yeah.
And I didn't see him in this. Maybe age has taken that out of his face or whatever. But I was looking for old Starship Troopers himself, and I couldn't find him in this.
I know, man. And Casper Van Diem is a weird guy because he's got a name you recognize, but he's never really been a leading man. I mean, Starship Troopers only worked because it was such a weird movie, but Casper wasn't necessarily the reason. I'm hoping that he was the guy whose head gets knocked off in the motorball match, and he goes, "Oh crap!" and then his head gets run over. That's who I'm hoping was Casper Van Dien.
I mean, I just like how, we have like kind of a maybe semi-robotic or whatever Jeff Fahey with robot dogs.
So good.
How cool is that?
I forget how much I love Jeff Fahey, especially when he's allowed to choose scenery.
So good.
Oh man, and there's a part of me watching it, and I don't know if it was the hat or what, but I'm thinking, wow, this is like if Burt Reynolds had made Smokey and the Bandit 5, this is about what it would have looked like cybernetic arms and all. And man, I just really, really did enjoy that character. And I think we're all sad. Like, he needs more time in the sequel if we do get a sequel.
Oh, yeah.
Do we think that they're going to get a sequel?
Well, they certainly left the door wide flipping open.
Well, listen, man, and I'll get to that in a minute, because that's why ultimately I don't like this movie. But do we think that this is going to do well enough to make a sequel?
It is banking
it
at
hasn't
number one
opened in
right
China yet, has it? It hasn't opened in China yet. It's gonna be one of those movies, man, that gets a huge overseas box office. I think this could be. I think that, that budget was so high, but I think this could be something that actually sticks around at the box office until Captain Marvel gets here.
There's really nothing until Captain Marvel, so I think
that's
you're
what
right.
That's what I was trying to say at the beginning of the show, is that I think that this has some staying power, because it is, it is a 4-quadrant movie. Weirdly,
and I don't know if James Cameron probably has enough cheese on his grater that he can force the sequel to be made. Like there's some movies like The Maze Runner, Divergent. Those movies were set out to be sequels, didn't do great at the box office, but they still kind of brute forced more movies into it.
Well, and the star of this movie was in those Maze Runner flicks.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which Rosa Salazar was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's what she's most known for.
Oh, I said she's most known for the 7 minutes she was in Bird Box for me. So that's sad.
All this
And the
string
Leslie
It's a
cannon.
Machine Gun Kelly. But I kind of feel like they have to, because this is a story, man. There's so much we still don't know about her, like knowing the source material. This is something that could unfold great. And, people in their box office expectations and in their movie expectations, and when they're looking if this should go forward, they need to be comparing this to Ghost in the Shell. But because of the age and the post-apocalyptic setting, the age of the lead and her gender, it's going to get compared to Hunger Games.
Yes.
And that's not the right comparison for this movie. This isn't Hunger Games. This came out way before Hunger Games and the source material. This shouldn't be lumped in with Hunger Games, Divergent, and Maze Runner, which I'm afraid it will be in a lot of people's mind. And that horrible Peter Jackson movie where cities had wheels. What was that called?
Mortal Engines.
Oh, man. I saw that movie in the movie theater.
I did too. And it
is such a travesty of a movie. I love it so much. It's so bad that I love that movie.
I'm sitting here watching it, thinking this movie is like a half turn of the screw away from me having fun with it, but that half turn of a screw is just awful. It's like when you're watching a movie and the audio is a half second out of sync with the movement of the lips. No matter how good that movie is, you just can't get into it.
When Green Terminator shows up in that movie, I was all in. I was like, oh man, they really are kitchen sinking this whole thing. So
yeah.
But to get back to Alita, so because this is where ultimately this movie fails for me. It feels like they're trying to build the universe out, and that's fine. You can do that. That's great. But you have to make your first movie work on its own. Yeah. And ultimately, about halfway through this movie, I realized, they don't have enough time to get everything out. Like there's not going to be a satisfying finish to this movie, which means they're probably planning on having multiple movies. And as it keeps continuing on, I start getting more and more grieved by this movie, where, okay, so you're going to spend time on this instead of getting to the thing to make your movie work as one. Because when you look at something like the first Iron Man movie works as its own movie. If they never made another Marvel movie, you could still see Iron Man 1 and go, wow, that movie works on its own, and that movie's great. But with this, that is not the case. It's the problem with DC properties also.
Yeah.
Is that they keep trying to build out these universes before they make a movie. And this is not a movie. This is them trying to build IP, and it makes me crazy.
And me trying to read the mind of the folks that made this movie, I think the problem is this is 1.5 story arcs. And if they had focused on the first story arc, they would have been okay. 2 story arcs would have been too much. But I think they thought that 1 story arc wasn't quite enough because they wanted to take you until Hugo dies, which kind of requires 2 story arcs. So they kind of squeezed like ideally, if this followed the same structure as the manga, the first movie would have all been about her as a bounty hunter, and her big victory is when she defeats Skrine and Garishka, and you think Hugo's dead, and then you find out she kept his head alive. Like, that is the end of the first story arc. The second story arc is all motorball all the time, trying to win her way to Typhares, which is Zalem in this movie. Hugo trying to come to terms with being a cyborg now after, making his living stealing body parts from cyborgs. He goes nuts, climbs the tunnel, and dies. But they wanted him to die in this movie, and I kind of get it, but I see what you're saying. And then showing Nova up there is just, I mean, if Ed Norton's only appearance in the world of movies as Nova is what he did in this movie, it's kind of like, man, what a waste. Why not?
You would feel at the end of this movie like a lot of people felt after that first Thanos, and people were like, well, who the hell is that?
Yes.
Oh man. But
so
I mean,
here's the other problem that I have with this movie, because I have 2 fundamental problems, and I just told you the first one. The second problem I have is, what is this movie trying to say? What is the viewpoint they're trying to get across with this movie? Because I can't, originally it's about finding yourself and figuring out who you are, and it has nothing to do with, your exterior. It's about your interior. That's the first half of this movie. The second half of this movie isn't that at all. What are they saying? What are they trying to say here? And I can't figure it out. There's no message. There's no inner life to this movie. And I'll contribute in the second half of it.
I'll contribute some of that to the source material too, because I mean, as a rule, manga works in broad strokes and vagary. And very different from Western comics where, the origin story, man, we have it down to 73 specific details with 3 retcons, and then this canon on Earth 2 versus Earth 1. They're like, they kind of leave it a little bit vague, like, yeah, and you just go with it. But I don't know. I don't know if it's what it's trying to say, but I also think there's supposed to be a message about underestimating folks.
Oh, I see.
I really think that's the point, is to make
that's the second half
to make the small framed people feel proud of themselves and to feel validated in a certain way, and just in particularly female viewers to they really work in lines a couple of times. You've made one of the worst mistakes a person can make. You've underestimated a girl. Yeah. And I think that is a refrain a lot of times that you can hear. Is that one of the biggest mistakes is underestimating a girl, underestimating a lady. And there's a little bit too about, even though it's awesome that she knows Panzerkunst and she can physically defeat people, she even fights an unwinnable fight because she does not stand by in the presence of evil. So I think there's a little bit of morality play there, that it's better to fight evil and lose than to stand idly by and observe.
I thought that was such
convinced me, sir.
I thought that was such a great thing of, like, when they first get there, she first gets, her body and everything, and sees, Ed 209 walking down, and just instinctively goes into hey, I'm going to protect this living thing and all that. Like, that's awesome. Like, I mean, again, it's just
I love
really
that
cool
conceit
bit
in movies, stories, TV shows, when a person who seems harmless, but a Jason Bourne moment where it's like, how did you learn how to do that? I don't know. I don't know how I knew how to do that. I just did it. Like, I don't know how I know this, but I know that guy's 27 feet away. He's got a wallet in his left hip. You know how he does that thing. He's like, I have no idea how I know this, but I do. I like that conceit, that trope, you could even call it now. And she has she has it in spades.
All right. Well, I mean, we've talked a lot about this movie, a lot of different things in it, its history and all that kind of good stuff. But there's really only one thing that everyone is, clamoring to find out is how this movie connects to Sylvester Stallone.
One of the weird things about this is that there's so many people who have connections to Sylvester Stallone in this movie that I had to find one that would be a little different. And so I did. I found one. Kayla Edelbute is one of 2 production designers on Alita Battle Angel. She's been in show business since 1990, but there's one credit on her resume as a prop assistant that I had to do a deep dive into because it's a movie I didn't even know existed. And it's called Beastmaster 2 Through the Portal of Time. If your parents owned HBO in the 80s, then you absolutely saw the first Beastmaster, because from 1982 to 1989, all HBO ever played was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Arthur, and Beastmaster. Now, if your parents didn't own HBO in the 80s, and you're uninitiated with the Beastmaster, it's about a guy who can talk to animals and get them to do what he wants. He carries around a sword, hangs out with hot ladies, he has long blonde hair, and he is incredibly awesome. I can't remember anything that happens in it because I haven't seen it since I was a small child, but today I bet it looks a whole lot like people made a movie in the woods somewhere in Southern California. Imagine my delight when I learned that the world building of Beastmaster continues with a sequel everyone was asking for. And here's the plot synopsis of Beastmaster 2. Dar is a warrior who can talk to the beasts. He is forced to travel the earth to stop his evil brother from stealing an atomic bomb and turning their native land into a desert, from a desert into a different kind of desert. Beastmaster 2 Portal Through Time stars Mark Singer and Carrie Werrer, which is the most 90s sentence I've said since the early 90s. There's some good bits of trivia on IMDb about this movie, like when Dar, who's played by Mark Singer, is riding through LA in the convertible, they pass by a movie theater which is showing Beastmaster 2 Through the Portal of Time. That's the name of this movie.
Wow, I've got to see this movie.
The subtitle of the film is Through the Portal of Time. However, the film is not about traveling through a time portal of any kind at all. It's actually about traveling through a portal to a parallel universe where the 1991 Earth exists. The nerd rage behind the guy who wrote that exquisite sentence. Because seriously, it's Beastmaster 2. Who cares? The people watching Beastmaster 2 aren't watching it because of the science involved with a man speaking directly to a tiger. And yet another person wrote, Kodo and Podo appear in this movie despite one of them dying as a major plot point in the previous film. Beastmaster 2, everybody. When looking through IMDb user reviews, I learned that there is also a third Beastmaster movie. And this review needs to be repeated because it's a perfect review and is the exact reason why IMDb user reviews were created in the first place. And this one is entitled Disgrace to the Series, but the next one is better. And they call themselves the WAG 777. The WAG writes, and I'm quoting, I love the first and third Beastmasters, but the second one is an abomination. It was almost as horrible as the Never-Ending Story 3 for the same reasons. They took a fascinating fantasy world filled with barbarian tribes, farming villages, witches, supernatural creatures, and a cult of religious fanatics using a pyramid, and thought it would be funny to mix in our materialistic pop culture world of rock and roll, sushi, and flashy sports cars. These two worlds don't belong together. I do not want to see a bunch of ancient barbarian-looking people dancing to some rock song on a car radio. I have a sense of humor, but this is just stupid. This is what Hollywood does to good fantasy movies when they run out of ideas. Don't give up, though. The Eye of Braxis, Beastmaster 3 is much, much better. That one I gave a 10. This one, Portal of Time, I gave a 1. End quote. Kayla Edelbute is the production designer on Alita Battle Angel, and she was the assistant visual consultant on Copland, starring Sylvester Stallone. And there you have it, HMPers. This week's Stallone connection is Kayla Edelbute. Thank you. I'm Sean Kovacs. Thank you.
You guys know what HBO stands for, right? Hey, Beastmaster's on.
Hey, that's great.
I love it.
And then later,
for the record, I felt like they showed Arthur 2 on the rocks way more than Arthur.
and when it went to TBS, it was known as the Beastmaster Station because it happened quite a lot. I just finished Don Coscarelli's book, and it's quite good. He did the first Beastmaster and, of course, all the Phantasm movies and stuff like that. Check that book out. It's called True Indie.
Was Mark Singer in all 3 Beastmasters?
He was at least in 2, I know.
He is in all 3, I can confirm.
I loved it. That was the era when they would like recast somebody like Mark Singer with like Fred Kramer from the TV show Hunter in the same role with no explanation and expect you to buy it.
I believe that's Fred Dwyer, sir.
That's what I meant.
No, it's Mark Singer in all 3.
Okay, they used to do these weird, just recast the lead actor, give him the same name, and expect people to go with it because they don't own VCRs yet.
It's that first Beastmaster. I can remember being a kid and being like, this might be the best movie I've ever seen.
There was a real talent for making great first movies and horrible sequels back then.
Indeed, there was. But is this what is bound to get many a sequel? Because James Cameron's behind it. James Cameron only knows how to make sequels, I believe, at this point. What did we think of this movie? Now, here at Hero Movie Podcast, we have our own patented Robin rating system. Check that out at facebook.com/Hero Movie Podcast. Bruce, where does Alita Battle Angel fall on the Robin rating system for you, sir?
Not a perfect movie, but I had a lot of fun. I mean, last year, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, I started worrying that something was broken inside me because I just wasn't enjoying movies like I used to. But I seem to have gotten some of that back because lately I've been enjoying.
And honestly, some of our listeners have even commented as such as Bruce hates everything.
and sometimes, I'll see a certain episode of a television show, particularly when I'm not expecting it to be as good as it is. A certain episode of maybe a television show, or I'll see a movie like this, and I honestly get like a little feeling of euphoria, not unlike when you use certain substances, though I have used no substances. And that's like this amazing feeling. That's why I love these kind of movies so much. And I got a little bit of that, I don't know, movie watcher's high going with
the old familiar.
Yeah, I liked it, man. I understand that it's, you can compare it to a lot of movies that are better this way or that way, but that doesn't mean this isn't a good movie. I recommend this movie to everybody. I want people to watch this. I want people to have fun with this. So much better than the other stuff that you could easily lump into this category. I don't compare Alita with The Ghost in the Shell. I don't compare Alita with Power Rangers. I don't compare Alita with Death Note. I compare Alita with Hit Girl and X-23. She's right there with me. I'm going to give this a solid Tim Drake. I'm not going to be as enthusiastic as to give it a Dick Grayson because it does have flaws, but I want everybody who hasn't seen this movie, if you listen to this podcast for some reason and haven't seen it, go check it out. It's good.
Sean, what do you got?
I will say I was going to give this a worse grade, but Bruce actually convinced me that it is a little better than I gave it credit for. Although I am still just very, very bummed by the fact that it's going to take more than one movie for this to be satisfying. That is such a massive bummer. Just make your movie. Make one movie, and if it's great, then make more. But make a movie first. And I do like the girl power stuff. I do like that it's different. I wanted it. I'll be honest with you. I wanted to be surprised by this movie the same way that I was surprised with Into the Spider-Verse, where it was just such a joy. And watching that movie, I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I want. And this movie is not that. And it's not that specifically because they didn't make a movie. They're trying to build IP. So for me, this is it's going to be Damian Wayne, but that's only because Bruce had convinced me that it is a little better than I originally thought.
Yeah, and I think this is also a movie that I'm probably I know I'm definitely going to watch again in I think in theaters. I think I'm going to enjoy it more the second time around because some expectations and stuff are gone, and now I can kind of get into it, as it were. But yeah, I really like this a whole lot. I had a lot of fun with it, and once things kind of got to where it felt like the story was trucking along there, I thought it was a really fun time. I did see it in IMAX 3D. I thought the 3D was fantastic. So if that's the thing that gets you, I will say this though, they really could have saved themselves a lot of CGI money and just got like Aubrey Plaza to play this role, and you wouldn't have to CGI the eyeballs or nothing, Seems like they could have had to save themselves some bread. It wouldn't have been.
I'm an Aubrey Plaza fan, but not here.
Yeah, not here. No. I again, that's a fun joke we do here on the show. But yeah, I'm with Bruce.
Plus, you would
here.
have to pretend not to care.
Yeah, it's just like I don't know what these
Alita,
guys.
apathetic
Angel, yeah,
apathetic angel, perfect. So I'm going to go with Bruce here. I'm giving this a strong Tim Drake. I had a really good time, and I would suggest see this on the biggest, loudest screen that you can. And if you got 3D available to you, do that as well. Robert Rodriguez, even though James Cameron was the one that everyone pats on the back with Avatar in 3D and bringing 3D back into the realm, Robert Rodriguez did that far many years before he did with the Spy Kids flicks. So, really Robert Rodriguez is one that we should be thinking on that. Anyhow, that is it, everybody. Next week, we're doing something a little different. Now, it's not really that different. We do it every month. It's called Patreon. That's right. Our people over at Patreon vote on the films that we watch, and God love them. Whatever one it is that they end up picking, we watch it and we talk about it on this program. We don't have those ironed out as of just yet, but I think we're going to do that in the post show. And how do you listen to that post show? Do like the Patreon people, be able to vote and listen to that post show in the Dinger Zone by heading on over to patreon.com/HMP and joining up today. In the meantime, Bruce, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
Hey, we took a week off on Chubby Wizard, so that means when we come back this Wednesday, we'll have double the trouble for you. So check us out at Chubby Wizard. You can always go to Amazon.com, look for Dragon in the Needles, the first entry in my Lump Adventures, or you can even splurge and get Dragon Blinder, the complete Lump Adventures, the Lump Adventures Omnibus, which does indeed have a 14 to 16-year-old girl who never loses a battle, because I like that trope. You
and Chris just basically never mind. I had a joke.
We're going to talk about what's it called, Left Kenny or Letter Kenny? We're definitely going to be talking Letter Kenny. I got to ask the Canadian about this.
Oh, now I remember my joke. You two, dang it, you said Letter Kenny and then it went away. My memory's the worst. Double Trouble. I picture you and Chris Elvins as the Olsen twins. Gosh, that was
awesome.
Not good enough to wait all that long, was it?
Worth it, Fortress.
I was thinking
totally worth that
sister,
horrible joke.
Worth it.
Sean, do you have a website available for us?
I do. You can go to KoufaxTripleTrouble.com. It's better than Double Trouble.
And one more better.
It's one better than Double Trouble. It's KoufaxTripleTrouble.com.
Oh man, and I'm gonna be doing other stuff. I don't know, but so yeah, check us out next week, everybody, when we're talking one of our Patreon selects for Sean Koufax, Bruce Leslie. I'm Adam Portrais. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Evie.